It was one of those quiet Saturday mornings where everything felt safe. I was standing in the living room, folding a pile of warm laundry, the smell of lavender still clinging to the fabric. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, soft and lazy, like the day itself had no rush. I remember thinking about pancakes, maybe running to the store later. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but instinct told me to pick up. "Hello?" I answered, already bracing for a scam call or wrong number. But then, that voice. Soft. Nervous. "Hi. Is this Laura? It's Camille." My heart stopped for half a second. Camille. Eric's ex. I hadn't heard her name in years. My brain scrambled to place her tone, to make sense of why she'd be calling me. "I just needed to clear the air," she said, "to apologize." Apologize? My stomach tightened. I kept my voice steady. Apologize for what? That's when she hesitated. And I mean really hesitated, like she'd just realized she stepped onto a minefield barefoot. Then she asked it, "Wait, you don't know?" My whole body went cold. "Know what, Camille?" I pressed, even though my instincts were already screaming. The silence that followed wasn't just uncomfortable. It was loud. And then, like a secret unraveling too fast, she said it. "We've been seeing each other again." I froze. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. It felt like someone had poured ice water straight down my spine. My hands, still holding a t-shirt, started to shake. Camille must have realized what she'd done, because she immediately started backpedaling, talking too fast, too soft, saying she thought he'd told me, and didn't mean for it to come out this way. I could barely hear her over the roaring in my ears. My heart was pounding so hard it was painful. "I thought he was going to come clean soon," she mumbled. Those words. Come clean. Like they were doing me a favor by eventually telling me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw something, but all I could do was stand there, staring at the phone like it had betrayed me too. "How long?" I finally whispered. She hesitated again, then quietly, "A few months." My knees nearly gave out. Months. While I was here folding his clothes, he was folding himself into hers. I don't remember how the call ended. I think I hung up. Or maybe she did. Everything after that was a blur, just the sound of silence and the low throb of humiliation setting in. I stood there in the middle of my living room, holding a towel that wasn't even dry anymore, trying to catch my breath. It felt like the ground had been yanked from under me, but no one had seen it happen. Just me, and a voice from the past that shattered the present. And yet something inside me didn't break. Not yet. I sat down on the edge of the couch, laundry forgotten, phone still in my hand like it might ring again and undo what had just happened. But it didn't. The house was completely still, like it was holding its breath with me. I stared at the wall for what felt like an hour. My mind played back every recent moment with Eric. His late nights, the sudden boys' trips, the half-smiles that didn't quite reach his eyes. It all started to click. That phone call cracked something wide open inside me. Not just heartbreak, but clarity. Camille had called thinking I already knew. That meant she wasn't confessing. She was trying to ease her conscience before he could spin his version of the truth. I wasn't just betrayed. I was being managed. And that made something in me shift. Hurt gave way to something sharper. A chill that had nothing to do with heartbreak. I wasn't going to fall apart. Not yet, anyway. Because here's the thing about betrayal. It has layers. And underneath the shock and the sadness, there's a space. A space where decisions get made. Quiet ones. Strategic ones. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. Not exactly. But I knew I wasn't going to tell him I knew. Not yet. He'd just handed me the truth. And he had no idea what I planned to do with it. The hours after that call were slow and surreal. Like I was watching my own life from outside my body. I moved through the house like a ghost, emptying the dishwasher, feeding the cat, answering a few texts like nothing had changed. But everything had. Inside, I was unraveling one thread at a time. I couldn't stop thinking about the way Camille's voice cracked, the way she whispered it like she was doing me a favor. And the worst part? She thought I already knew. But now that I did know, I couldn't unsee anything. Every odd little moment from the past few months rushed back like a reel playing in reverse. Eric suddenly working late all the time, saying he was swamped but never showing signs of stress. The way he flinched when I reached for his phone. That spontaneous weekend golf trip with no photos, no tan, and no stories. I had brushed them all off, because that's what you do when you trust someone. You give them the benefit of the doubt, until they use it to bury you. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Not then. Instead, I went to the kitchen, sat at the table, and opened our phone bill. The details spilled out like evidence in a courtroom. His number and hers, dozens of times a week. Long calls, late at night, during lunch breaks, texts that spiked around the same times he was working late. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a pattern, a strategy. He was living two lives, and I was the stage prop in one of them. I sat there for a long time, staring at those phone records like they might suddenly change, like maybe I was wrong. But I wasn't. The truth was right there in call logs and timestamps, cruel and undeniable. He'd built an entire routine around hiding this. And Camille's call? That wasn't a confession. That was damage control. She was trying to unburden herself, not protect me. And honestly, that stung just as much. It wasn't just betrayal. It was disrespect. Not even the courtesy of a lie to my face. Just silence. A hollow routine. Breakfasts, I love yous, shared pillows, while she tiptoed in and out of his world behind my back. And the worst part? I had felt it. I'd had that itch in my gut for weeks, that quiet knowing we so often smother with hope. Because facing it means you might lose everything. But now? I had already lost something far more dangerous. My trust. Still, I didn't say a word to him that night. He came home like usual, tired, distracted, kissed me on the cheek like nothing had happened. I smiled back. I asked about his day, made dinner, listened to him ramble about office politics I no longer believed existed. And while he spoke, I nodded, even laughed. But inside, I was already gone. Not emotionally, strategically. Because something in me had clicked into place. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to take my time. I slept beside him that night, listening to his breathing, watching the shape of him outlined in the soft light of the street lamp outside our window. He looked peaceful, safe, like a man with nothing to hide. It made my skin crawl. I laid there, eyes wide open, while the weight of everything pressed down on my chest. But instead of breaking, I started thinking. Really thinking. Not about why he did it. I was done with that. But about what came next. That's when something in me hardened. I wasn't going to beg for answers or fall into his arms crying, asking for closure he'd never give. I deserved better than that. I wasn't his fragile little secret keeper. I was his wife. And if he didn't remember that, I was going to make sure he never forgot what it cost him to underestimate me. So I started sketching a plan. Quietly. Carefully. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Out of something deeper than anger. Because this wasn't just about what he did. It was about how I was going to answer it. On my terms. In my time. I didn't want chaos. I wanted clarity. I wanted him to look me in the eye one day and realize I had known all along, and that I chose to be 5 steps ahead, and I wouldn't need to yell. I wouldn't need to fall apart. No, when it came time, I'd let the truth do all the screaming for me. The next morning, I woke up early, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. There was something powerful about taking control in silence. I brewed coffee, sat at the table with my laptop, and typed "private investigator" near me. It felt strange at first, like something out of a movie, but I wasn't acting. This was real. I had no intention of confronting Eric without evidence so solid it couldn't be spun, denied, or downplayed. I wanted truth with teeth. By noon, I had an appointment for the following day. The investigator was discreet, efficient, and far too experienced in these kinds of things. I told him I wanted confirmation, not because I didn't believe Camille, but because I needed more than her word. I needed timelines, pictures, receipts. I wanted to see where they met, how often, how brazen they'd become. And within days, I had it. Photos of them at a boutique hotel, a dinner downtown, her hand brushing his cheek like it was hers to hold. And the worst part? He looked happy, not guilty, not distant, not conflicted, just happy. Like our life together wasn't even a shadow on his conscience. That image stuck with me more than any explicit proof. It wasn't just infidelity. It was erasure. He had built another world where I didn't exist. And that, more than anything, is what made me sit down with a lawyer the very next morning. Not to talk about if I'd leave, but how. The lawyer was sharp, composed, and didn't waste time on pleasantries, which I appreciated more than I expected. She laid everything out in clean lines: assets, options, leverage. I handed her the file I had been building, printed texts, call logs, bank statements, even the photos. She flipped through it quietly, nodding. "You've done your homework," she said. And I had. Because this wasn't about pain anymore. This was about precision. I wasn't leaving broken. I was leaving prepared. But first, I had to play my part a little longer. So I slipped back into the role of unsuspecting wife. I laughed at his tired jokes. I cooked his favorite meals. I kissed him goodnight. All while the paperwork moved forward behind the scenes. It was exhausting, but empowering too. Like I had a secret strength wrapped in calm. He had no idea. And that was the beauty of it. The more he believed I was in the dark, the more power I had in my hands. Then I planted the final seed, our special dinner. I told him I wanted to cook something nice for the weekend. Just us. No distractions. A cozy night in. He smiled, flattered, completely oblivious. "Sounds perfect," he said, pouring wine like he hadn't just dismantled our life behind my back. I nodded sweetly. But inside, I was already setting the table, not for romance, but for revelation. And trust me, I was going to serve it cold. The days leading up to that dinner were almost surreal. He kissed me goodbye in the mornings, texted me from work like everything was fine. And I played along, every smile more deliberate, every word more controlled. I watched him move through our house, through my life, unaware that every step he took was walking him closer to the edge. The investigator sent over one last batch of photos. They were recent, fresh. Him and Camille, again, arm around her waist, her lips on his neck. I forwarded them to my lawyer without blinking. It was strange how numb I had become to it all. The betrayal wasn't a wound anymore. It was data, evidence. Weight in my favor. The house, the savings, everything we'd built. I was positioning it to fall right into my hands. Not because I was greedy, but because I'd earned it. I'd kept that home warm while he gave his warmth to someone else. Now, I was reclaiming every inch, and he had no idea he was helping me do it. I asked him to pick up dessert on his way home. I told him to wear something nice, said I wanted to feel like we were dating again. He chuckled, told me he liked this new romantic side of mine. I smiled and said nothing, because the night was almost here. The dinner was set, The final move was coming. And the truth? I wasn't nervous. I was ready. That Saturday night, the house smelled like rosemary and roasted garlic. Candles flickered in the dining room. Soft jazz played in the background, one of his favorite old records. Everything looked perfect, cozy, romantic, just the way he liked it. He walked in with a smile and a bakery bag, kissed my cheek and said, "Wow, you really went all out." I nodded. "It's a special night," I replied, and oh, it was. I had invited a few close friends to join us. Last minute, I told him. He didn't question it. Just assumed I wanted company, a little laughter around the table. What he didn't know was that I had chosen very specific people, friends who had known us for years, friends who had believed in our marriage. And, most importantly, friends whose opinions still mattered to him, the kind that might just burn when they hear the truth. We toasted, we laughed, we passed plates of food like nothing was boiling underneath. Then, after dessert, I stood up. "I actually have a little surprise," I said, pretending to fumble with my phone. He looked up, half curious, half distracted. "I had a really interesting phone call earlier this week. Someone wanted to apologize." That got everyone's attention. I tapped play. The room went still. And then Camille's voice spilled out through the speaker, soft, nervous, unmistakable. "We've been seeing each other again." A gasp, a fork hitting the table. And Eric's face? It was the kind of silence you feel. He looked like he'd been struck across the face, eyes wide, mouth open, searching for something to say that wouldn't make it worse. But there was nothing left to protect. Camille's voice kept playing, trembling with guilt, admitting every ugly piece. You could hear the room breathing. No one moved. No one blinked. I didn't look at him right away. I just stood there letting the words hang in the air like smoke from a fire I hadn't started, but I was damn sure going to finish. When the audio stopped, no one spoke. Not for a few seconds. And then I slowly reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out the envelope. Thick, neatly labeled. I walked over and placed it in front of him, like a final course. "This is for you," I said. My voice calm, measured. "And don't worry, your ex already helped me prepare it." That line hit him like a punch. I could see the denial rise in his throat, but it couldn't escape. Not in front of witnesses, not after that. His hands shook as he opened the papers. Divorce, asset division, property ownership, all clean, all legal, all done. He looked up at me, like he didn't know who I was anymore. But here's the thing. I hadn't changed. I had just stopped shrinking. Everyone around the table looked at me differently too. Not with pity, but with something closer to awe. I wasn't the victim of his story. I was the editor. Excuse, half apology, half denial. But I didn't give him the chance. I raised one hand, gentle but firm, and said, "Don't. You've already said enough." And he had. Between the late nights, the lies, the silence, he'd written every line of this ending. The room stayed quiet, watching him squirm. It wasn't rage they saw in me. It was resolve. And that, I think, unnerved him more than if I'd screamed. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to end one. He looked around the room for someone to save him. But no one moved. No one would. Our friends weren't stupid. They'd seen enough now to piece the rest together. And I didn't need their sympathy. I had their clarity. I wasn't afraid of being alone at that table. I had been alone for months. The only difference now was that he knew it too. And as he sat there with his guilt laid bare, I collected the dishes like a perfect host, calm, graceful, in full control. That was the part that hit him hardest. Not the recording, not the papers, but the way I didn't fall apart. I had built the entire night like a house of mirrors, letting him catch a glimpse of himself from every angle. No distortion, no excuses, just truth, framed and well lit. And while he tried to catch his breath in a room that suddenly felt too small, I looked across the table at the woman I used to be and nodded. She finally had her moment. The divorce went through faster than I expected. I think he just wanted it over with. Wanted to disappear before the weight of what he'd done crushed whatever dignity he had left. And honestly, I didn't stop him. I kept the house, the savings, the car. But more importantly, I kept my peace. My nights were quiet again, not from loneliness, but from freedom. No more waiting for footsteps that came too late. No more pretending I couldn't smell perfume that wasn't mine. Camille? She didn't stick around. 2 weeks after the dinner, he moved out. 3 weeks later, she was gone. No dramatic goodbye, no public fallout, just vanished. Maybe she realized that if he could lie to me for that long, he could lie to her just as easily. Or maybe she just got what she came for and got bored. Either way, it wasn't my problem. Not anymore. I wasn't interested in their mess. I had cleaned up enough already. And now, the house was mine again. Truly mine. I started repainting, rearranging, pulling his leftovers from drawers and closets and setting them by the door, one box at a time. There was something sacred in the process, like I was reclaiming the air. Every corner I touched felt a little lighter, a little more me. I wasn't just moving on, I was rebuilding. Not as a woman scorned, but as a woman awake. And with every sweep of the brush, I reminded myself, this was the price of freedom, and I had paid it in full. Some days, I'd catch myself reaching for 2 coffee mugs instead of 1. Muscle memory. Habit. But I'd smile and put the second one back. Not in sadness, but in acknowledgement. That version of my life had ended, and this one was just beginning. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. It felt like possibility. I started waking up early, going on long walks, buying fresh flowers just because I wanted to see something bloom. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting on anyone to join me. People kept telling me how strong I was. But strength wasn't what carried me through. It was clarity. The moment I stopped asking why and started asking what now, everything shifted. I stopped clinging to the version of Eric I had loved and started accepting the one I had actually married. That was the hardest part, not the betrayal, but the acceptance. Once I made peace with the truth, I was unstoppable. And the people around me? They noticed. They watched me rise. And they chose me. Friends who had once seemed unsure picked up the phone. Family members reached out with softness in their voices. No one blamed me anymore for being blindsided. They admired me for how I handled it, with dignity, with strategy, with my head held high. I hadn't just walked through fire. I had carried a damn bucket of water, poured it out, and rebuilt from the ashes. And honestly, it looked good on me. The last thing I did was box up the final drawer in the hallway, the one with his old keys, mismatched socks, and random things he never bothered to notice I kept organized. I carried it to the front door, set it down gently, and just looked at it for a moment. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about closure. That box wasn't just filled with junk. It was filled with the version of me who tolerated too much, smiled through too many lies, stayed silent for too long. And she didn't live here anymore. I took one last walk through the house that day. The walls were lighter. The silence was different. Not hollow. Peaceful. I passed the mirror in the hallway and caught a glimpse of myself. Not broken. Not bitter. Just free. I opened the windows, let the air rush in, and breathed in the life I had reclaimed. Not because of him, but in spite of him. And as I tossed his final box into the donation pile, I laughed. Because that phone call, the one that shattered everything, it ended up being a gift. Camille didn't mean to set me free, but she did. She just wanted to apologize. And in the end, I should have thanked her. Not for the confession, not even for the truth, but for lighting the match that burned the bridge I was too afraid to walk away from. She handed me my freedom, and I took it.
Some women just aren't meant to be mothers. Beverly's voice drifted from the kitchen. Maybe it's time we stop pretending. I froze in the hallway, my hand gripping the doorframe to steady myself. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the words sliced through me with surgical precision. "Mom, please," Michael responded, his voice low but tense. "We're trying our best. The doctors say there's no reason it shouldn't happen." 2 years, Michael. 2 years of these so-called treatments, and nothing. I hate seeing you waste your life waiting for something that clearly isn't meant to be. I backed away silently, my heart hammering in my chest. The pill organizer I'd come to retrieve sat forgotten on the kitchen counter as I retreated to the guest bedroom. My name is Geneva Wilson, 36 years old, a paralegal at Sandoval and Associates in Albuquerque. For 2 years, I've been taking fertility medication, following strict schedules, and enduring monthly disappointments while trying to conceive with my husband, Michael. Every negative test has been a tiny funeral for a hope that never materialized. Beverly, my mother-in-law, moved in with us temporarily after selling her house last year. She was supposed to stay until she found a new place, but months had passed with no sign of her looking. Instead, she'd inserted herself into every aspect of our lives, particularly our fertility journey. "I'm just trying to help," she'd insist, organizing my medications, reminding me about appointments, asking invasive questions about my cycle. I'd accepted her involvement, desperate for support, and eager to prove myself worthy of her son. Michael and I had always planned to have children. We delayed it for years while I finished school and established my career, confident that when the time was right, nature would cooperate. When it didn't, we sought medical help. The doctors found nothing physically wrong with either of us, just one of those unexplained cases of infertility that would eventually resolve with medication and patience. I settled on the edge of the bed, Beverly's words echoing in my mind. Had she been saying these things to Michael all along? Did he secretly agree with her? As I sat there, I remembered something odd from that morning. While getting ready for work, I'd noticed my fertility pills looked different, slightly larger with a faintly different sheen. I dismissed it as a generic brand substitution by the pharmacy. Now, a cold suspicion formed in my stomach. I pulled out my phone and searched for images of my medication, comparing them to the mental picture of what I'd taken that morning. They didn't match. With trembling hands, I checked the reminder app on my phone. My prescription should have been refilled 3 weeks ago, but I had no memory of picking it up. Beverly had offered to handle it for me, saying she was happy to help with anything that might bring a grandchild. A terrible possibility began taking shape in my mind. Michael and I met at a courthouse where I was filing documents for my firm, and he was covering a case for the local newspaper. He'd asked for my help navigating the clerk's office, and I'd given him more than directions. I'd given him my number. 6 months later, we were engaged. A year after that, married in a small ceremony at his parents' house. Beverly had seemed supportive initially. She welcomed me with elaborate dinners and thoughtful gifts. But there were always undercurrents. Comments about Michael's ex-girlfriend who became a doctor. Questions about when I planned to move beyond paralegal work. Subtle reminders that the Wilson family had certain expectations. When we announced our plans to start a family, Beverly's interest intensified. She sent articles about maternal age and fertility concerns. She reminisced about how she'd conceived Michael without even trying at 23. She began showing up at our house unannounced, often during times when we might have been trying to conceive. Despite these tensions, I'd never considered her an enemy. I viewed her as a woman who loved her son fiercely, perhaps too fiercely. I believed that once I became pregnant, she would transfer that intensity to her grandchild. I wanted to make our relationship work. When Beverly sold her house and needed somewhere to stay, I was the one who suggested she move in with us. Michael had hesitated, but I insisted. It was an opportunity to strengthen our bond, I reasoned. To show her I wasn't the career-obsessed daughter-in-law she feared. Her presence changed the dynamic of our home immediately. She cooked elaborate meals that ignored my dietary preferences. She rearranged furniture and decorations without asking. She established routines that centered around her comfort. Most significantly, she began managing my fertility treatments. It started innocuously, offering to pick up prescriptions when she was already running errands, setting up a pill organizer in the kitchen where she could remind me to take my medication. I'd felt grateful for her help, interpreting it as acceptance. There had been warning signs looking back. Times when I was certain I'd had more pills left in a bottle. Occasions when the medication seemed different, a slightly altered color or shape that I attributed to lighting or my imagination. A peculiar satisfaction in Beverly's expression when my period arrived each month. But nothing concrete enough to justify suspicion. Nothing that couldn't be explained by generic substitutions or my own stressed perception. Then came the odd coincidences. Whenever Beverly visited her sister for a weekend, I'd feel different, more energetic, with the familiar hormonal shifts the medication was supposed to induce. When she returned, those sensations would fade. I'd dismissed these patterns as stress-related, a psychosomatic response to having our house to ourselves. Now I wasn't so sure. That evening, I retrieved the pill organizer from the kitchen counter while Beverly was busy watching her television programs. In the bathroom, I examined the contents carefully. The pills looked similar to my prescription at first glance, white, round, approximately the same size. But compared to the reference images on my phone, the differences were evident. These had no manufacturer's imprint. The edges were smoother. They dissolved faster when I placed one in water. These weren't my fertility medications. They looked like simple sugar pills. I flushed them down the toilet, my hands shaking with rage and disbelief. Could Beverly really have been sabotaging my treatments? For how long? And why? The questions swirled in my mind as I heard Michael arrive home from work. I composed myself, determined not to confront anyone until I had proof beyond a single day's pills. I needed to be strategic, to understand the full scope of Beverly's interference before taking action. Over dinner, I watched Beverly carefully as she inquired about my doctor's appointment scheduled for the following week. "I can drive you," she offered, serving Michael an extra portion of roast chicken while giving me a considerably smaller piece. "You shouldn't have to worry about parking downtown." "That's kind, but I'll manage," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "My office is just a few blocks away." Still, it must be so stressful going to these appointments month after month with no results. Her sympathetic tone didn't match the gleam in her eyes. "Have they suggested alternatives yet?" "Alternatives?" I echoed. "Well, adoption, or perhaps surrogacy with a younger egg donor." Beverly patted Michael's hand. "There are many ways to have a family these days." Michael looked uncomfortable, but remained silent, focusing on his food instead of defending me. His passivity felt like another betrayal. "The doctors are still optimistic," I said carefully. "Sometimes these treatments take time." 2 years is more than time, dear." Beverly's smile was sharp. "It's a message." That night, I couldn't sleep. While Michael snored beside me, I slipped out of bed and searched our bathroom thoroughly. In the back of a drawer beneath Beverly's guest toiletries, I found a prescription bottle with my name on it, my actual fertility medication. The date showed it had been filled just 3 weeks ago, but the bottle was nearly full. She had been intercepting my prescriptions and replacing the real medication with sugar pills, all while pretending to help. The evidence shook me to my core. I returned the bottle exactly as I'd found it and crept back to bed, my mind racing with implications. For 2 years, I'd blamed myself for our failure to conceive. I'd endured invasive procedures, hormonal side effects, and crushing disappointment, all while the solution was being deliberately kept from me by someone I trusted. I lay awake until dawn, calculating and planning. I wouldn't confront Beverly immediately. I needed to be smarter than that. I needed to understand if Michael was complicit or merely oblivious. And most importantly, I needed to secure access to my real medication without tipping my hand. The game had changed, and Beverly had no idea I was now playing. The next morning, I called my doctor's office from work and requested an immediate appointment, citing concerns about my medication. When the nurse asked what prompted my visit, I kept my explanation vague, just enough to secure a same-day slot during my lunch break. Dr. Patel greeted me with her usual warm efficiency. "Geneva, this is unexpected. Is everything all right?" I closed her office door and took a deep breath. I need to know if it's possible someone has been replacing my fertility medication with sugar pills. Her expression shifted from surprise to concern. "That's a serious allegation. What makes you think this might be happening?" I explained my discovery, showing her photos of the pills from my organizer compared to images of the actual medication. Dr. Patel examined them carefully, her frown deepening. "These do appear different," she agreed. "I can't confirm they're sugar pills without testing, but they're definitely not what I prescribed." She asked pointed questions about who had access to my medication, and I reluctantly explained Beverly's role in managing my prescriptions. Dr. Patel's expression grew troubled. "Geneva, medication tampering is illegal. It's a form of assault. If your mother-in-law is doing this, you should consider involving the authorities." The thought was overwhelming. "I need more proof first," I said. "And I need to figure out if my husband knows." Dr. Patel wrote a new prescription, instructing the pharmacy to not allow anyone but me to pick it up. "Keep this medication secure," she advised, "and consider consulting with a therapist about how to handle the situation. This is a profound breach of trust." I left her office with the prescription clutched in my hand, feeling simultaneously vindicated and devastated. My suspicions weren't paranoia, they were reality, but confirmation brought new challenges. Should I confront Beverly immediately? Tell Michael? Go to the police? I filled the prescription at a different pharmacy and kept the medication in my desk drawer at work. That evening at home, I pretended nothing had changed, swallowing Beverly's sugar pills while she watched with that same satisfied smile. Over the next 2 weeks, I took my real medication at the office while maintaining the charade at home. I documented everything: photographs of the fake pills, dates and times Beverly reminded me to take them, the bottle of real medication I'd found hidden in her things. I created a secure digital record that couldn't be discovered or destroyed. What I didn't do was confide in Michael. His continued silence during Beverly's pointed comments made me uncertain where his loyalties truly lay. Had he known all along? Was he complicit in his mother's scheme? My uncertainty was answered 3 weeks later when I overheard them arguing in his home office. I stood outside the door, listening. "Mom, this has gone on long enough," Michael said, his voice uncharacteristically firm. "I spoke with the doctor today. Geneva's been following the treatment plan perfectly. There's no reason it shouldn't be working." My heart lifted momentarily. He was defending me. "Unless the problem isn't the treatment," Beverly replied. "Have you considered that maybe she doesn't want children? That she's secretly taking birth control? Career women often say they want families but put it off indefinitely." "That's ridiculous," Michael protested, but his tone lacked conviction. "Is it? She works late twice a week. She's on her phone constantly. For all you know, she could be living a completely different life." "Geneva wouldn't do that." "Wouldn't she?" "I found this in her purse yesterday." There was a moment of silence, then Michael's shocked voice. "A birth control pill packet? Are you sure? Check the name on the prescription if you don't believe me." My blood ran cold. Beverly had planted false evidence. Worse, Michael seemed ready to believe it. After 2 years of shared struggle, his faith in me was so fragile that one planted discovery could shatter it. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. The situation had just escalated beyond anything I'd imagined. Beverly wasn't just preventing a pregnancy. She was actively trying to destroy my marriage. That night, Michael confronted me in our bedroom, his expression a mixture of hurt and anger. "Is there something you want to tell me?" he asked, holding up a birth control pill packet with my name on it. I stared at the packet, momentarily speechless. It looked authentic, a standard prescription with a label from our regular pharmacy. Beverly must have gone to extraordinary lengths to create this forgery. "That's not mine," I said finally. "I've never seen it before." "It has your name on it, Geneva. Mom found it in your purse." "And you believe her?" I asked, my voice rising. "Your mother went through my personal belongings, produced something I've never seen before, and you're taking her word over mine?" Michael faltered slightly. "I don't know what to believe anymore. 2 years of treatments with no results. The doctors say there's no medical reason it's not working." "So you think I've been sabotaging our chances? Why would I do that? Why would I put myself through the appointments, the side effects, the monthly disappointment?" "I don't know," he exclaimed. "Maybe you changed your mind about wanting children. Maybe you're afraid of how it will affect your career. People change, Geneva." The irony was almost unbearable. While I'd been discovering Beverly's betrayal, she had been setting up a counter-narrative that painted me as the deceiver. And Michael, the man who had promised to stand by me through everything, was ready to believe the worst. "Michael, look at me," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I have never taken birth control behind your back. I want a child, our child, more than anything." He studied my face, uncertainty written in his features. "Then how do you explain this?" He gestured to the pill packet. I made a split-second decision. I couldn't tell him about Beverly's medication tampering, not yet. If he repeated my accusations to her, she might destroy the evidence I'd collected. "I can't explain it," I said carefully. "But I swear to you it's not mine. Someone is trying to come between us." Michael ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen countless times during our fertility journey. "This is crazy. Why would anyone do that?" "Think about it, Michael. Who benefits if we start doubting each other? Who's been living with us, inserting herself into our most private struggles?" His expression hardened. "Don't bring my mother into this. She's been nothing but supportive." "Has she? Or has she been undermining me since the day we got married? Making comments about my age, my career, comparing me to your ex-girlfriends? She's old-fashioned, that's all. She wants what's best for me." "And she doesn't think that's me," I finished softly. Michael shook his head. "You're being paranoid. Mom would never—" A knock at our bedroom door interrupted him. Beverly stood there, her expression a perfect mask of concern. "I couldn't help overhearing," she said. "I'm so sorry this is happening, but perhaps it's for the best that everything's out in the open now." The calculated innocence in her voice made my skin crawl. This was a performance designed to drive the final wedge between Michael and me. "Nothing is out in the open," I retorted. "You planted that pill packet." Beverly's eyes widened with practiced shock. "Why would I do such a thing? Michael, can you believe what she's accusing me of?" Michael looked between us, clearly torn. In that moment, I realized the true extent of Beverly's manipulation. She'd been working on him for months, maybe years, planting seeds of doubt about my commitment, my honesty, my worthiness as his wife. "I think we all need some space," he said finally. "Geneva, maybe you should stay with a friend for a few days until we figure this out." The betrayal was complete. Beverly had succeeded in turning Michael against me, in making me the outsider in my own marriage. As I packed an overnight bag with shaking hands, I understood that everything had changed. This wasn't just about having a baby anymore. This was war. I checked into a hotel that night, my mind racing with plans and contingencies. The next morning, I called in sick to work and visited my gynecologist again, requesting a full workup, including a blood test that would show whether I had any birth control hormones in my system. Dr. Patel arranged for expedited results, understanding the urgency of my situation. "Geneva, Have you considered that your husband might be involved in this deception? She asked gently as the nurse drew my blood. I had considered it during the long, sleepless night at the hotel, but I couldn't bring myself to believe Michael would actively participate in such a scheme. I think he's being manipulated, I said. Beverly has always had a powerful influence over him. Even so, his willingness to believe these accusations without evidence is concerning, Dr. Patel noted. She was right, of course. Michael's readiness to doubt me revealed a fundamental weakness in our relationship. But I wasn't ready to give up on our marriage. Not until I understood exactly what had been happening in our home. The blood test results came back 2 days later, confirming no trace of birth control hormones in my system. Armed with this medical evidence, I decided it was time to retrieve the real fertility medication I discovered in Beverly's drawer. If I could present both the blood test results and the hidden pills to Michael, perhaps he would finally see the truth. I returned to our house while Michael was at work, using my key to enter quietly. Beverly's car wasn't in the driveway, which I took as a fortunate sign. Moving swiftly to the guest bathroom, I opened the drawer where I'd found my medication, only to discover it was empty. A quick search of the entire bathroom yielded nothing. Beverly had moved the evidence. I expanded my search to her bedroom, carefully checking drawers and closets, while ensuring everything remained exactly as I found it. Nothing. As I was about to give up, I noticed her bedside table drawer was slightly ajar. Inside was a journal, Beverly's handwriting clearly visible on the pages. I hesitated, knowing I was crossing a line by reading her private thoughts. But she had crossed far more significant lines with her actions. The journal entries confirmed my worst suspicions. Beverly had been systematically replacing my medication since shortly after she moved in, convinced that I was wrong for her son, and determined to prevent me from trapping him with a child. More disturbingly, she'd begun suggesting to Michael that we consider divorce, positioning herself as the supportive mother who only wanted his happiness. I took photos of the relevant pages with my phone, careful to replace the journal exactly as I'd found it. As I was closing the drawer, I heard the front door open. "Hello? Is someone here?" Beverly's voice called from the entryway. I froze, frantically scanning the room for a place to hide. The closet was too obvious, under the bed too exposed if she entered. The ensuite bathroom was my only option. I slipped inside just as Beverly's footsteps approached her bedroom. Through the crack in the door, I watched her enter, glance around suspiciously, and then check her bedside drawer, the very one I'd just been searching. She opened the journal, examining it carefully as if checking whether it had been disturbed. Apparently satisfied, she locked the journal in the drawer and removed the key, placing it on a chain around her neck. Then she retrieved her phone and made a call. "Michael? It's Mom. You'll never believe what I just found in Geneva's things. Printouts of sperm donor profiles. I think she was planning to get pregnant without telling you it wasn't your child." My heart pounded so loudly I was certain she would hear it. Another fabrication, another attempt to destroy Michael's trust in me. But this lie had given me an unexpected opportunity. Beverly was leaving the house again, heading to Michael's office to show him this evidence. The moment I heard the front door close, I emerged from hiding, my mind racing with a new plan. Beverly had revealed her playbook, and now I knew exactly how to counter it. 3 weeks later, Beverly called a family meeting at our house. Michael had returned home after a week, apologetic and confused. The blood test results had forced him to question Beverly's claims, though he remained uncertain about who to trust. We existed in an uneasy truce, sleeping in separate rooms while trying to navigate the fractured landscape of our marriage. Beverly, sensing her influence waning, had escalated her campaign. She invited Michael's siblings, their spouses, and several family friends to what she described as an intervention for Michael's marriage. I knew what she was planning. The journal entries I'd photographed detailed her intent to publicly announce my barrenness as grounds for Michael to divorce me, positioning herself as the concerned mother who only wanted her son to have the family he deserved. What she didn't know was that I'd been taking my actual fertility medication for over a month now, retrieved from my secure workplace and administered properly, and I'd received news that would dismantle her scheme entirely. The living room was tense as family members arrived, casting curious glances between Michael and me. Beverly orchestrated the seating arrangements to place herself at the center, with Michael beside her and me slightly apart. "Thank you all for coming," she began gravely. "I've asked you here because I'm deeply concerned about Michael and Geneva's situation. After years of trying, it's become clear that Geneva cannot provide the family Michael has always wanted." Murmurs of sympathy rippled through the room as Beverly continued, her voice dripping with false compassion. "Some women aren't meant to be mothers, and I believe it's time we acknowledge this difficult truth. Michael deserves a chance at fatherhood before it's too late." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. Beverly's expression was triumphant, certain she had orchestrated my ultimate humiliation. I smiled calmly and reached into my purse, retrieving an envelope. "Oh, right, I almost forgot." I placed the envelope on the coffee table. "I have some news to share with everyone." Beverly's face paled as I opened the envelope and removed the ultrasound image, passing it to Michael first. His eyes widened, darting between the photo and my face in disbelief. Are you?" he stammered. 10 weeks pregnant," I confirmed, my voice steady despite the emotion swelling in my chest. "Dr. Patel confirmed it last week. We're having a baby, Michael." The room erupted in confused congratulations as the ultrasound made its way around the circle. Beverly snatched it when it reached her, studying it as if searching for evidence of forgery. "This is impossible," she hissed. "You can't be pregnant." "Actually, I can," I replied. "Once I started taking the real medication instead of the sugar pills you'd been substituting, conception happened rather quickly." A shocked silence fell over the room. Beverly's face contorted with rage and panic. "What are you talking about? That's absurd." "Is it?" I turned to address the gathered family. "Beverly has been replacing my fertility medication with sugar pills for nearly 2 years. She hid my real prescriptions, created false evidence to make Michael doubt me, and deliberately sabotaged our attempts to start a family." I retrieved my phone and displayed the photos of Beverly's journal entries, passing it to Michael first. His expression shifted from confusion to horror as he read his mother's words in her own handwriting. "Mom?" he whispered. "Is this true?" Beverly stood abruptly, knocking over a glass in her haste. "This is all a fabrication. She's trying to turn you against me, Michael. She's always been jealous of our relationship." But her protests fell on deaf ears as the evidence of her manipulation circulated through the stunned family gathering. One by one, Michael's siblings and their spouses rose to leave, their congratulations to us now mixed with coldness toward Beverly. As the last guest departed, Beverly stood isolated in the center of the room, her carefully constructed scheme in ruins around her. "You should pack your things," Michael said quietly. "I think it's time you found your own place to live." I rested my hand protectively over my stomach, feeling for the first time in years that the future I'd dreamed of was finally within reach. 6 months later, our home felt transformed. Beverly had moved to a senior living community across town, her attempts to reconcile with Michael rebuffed until she agreed to therapy. The spare bedroom that had been hers was now a nursery, walls painted a soothing sage green, filled with books and toys gifted by friends and family who had rallied around us after learning the truth. Michael and I had attended counseling together, rebuilding the trust that Beverly had so methodically dismantled. It wasn't easy. There were difficult conversations about his willingness to believe the worst of me, about the dynamics of his relationship with his mother, about the boundaries we needed to establish going forward. But each session strengthened our foundation, preparing us for the family we were about to become. Dr. Patel continued to monitor my pregnancy with special attention, given our history. "Everything looks perfect," she assured me during my latest checkup. "After everything you've been through, you deserve this happiness, Geneva." I had kept my job at the law firm, though I planned to take a generous maternity leave when the baby arrived. My experience had inspired me to help create a new policy at work, supporting employees undergoing fertility treatments, providing flexible scheduling, and confidential resources. The most profound change, however, was internal. The woman who had endured Beverly's manipulation in silence, who had blamed herself for failures that were never her fault, had been replaced by someone stronger and more certain. I had discovered my capacity to fight for what mattered most, to gather evidence, to strategize, to prevail against someone who wished me harm. As I felt our daughter kick beneath my palm, a strong, insistent movement that seemed to announce her readiness for the world, I smiled. Some lessons come at a high price, and Beverly had paid it in full.